Joint Task Force 2. Hidden by layers of classification, Joint Task Force 2 stood as Canada's Tier 1 Special Operations Unit, established in 1993 to assume counter-terrorism and hostage rescue responsibilities, previously held by RCMP emergency teams. From its inception, the unit was engineered for missions where precision, secrecy, and speed mattered more than mass or visibility. Its mandate encompassed counter-terrorism, direct action, hostage rescue, special reconnaissance, and protective security, tasks that required surgical force and disciplined restraint, often under political sensitivity and media scrutiny. Following the September 11th attacks, JTF-2 shifted decisively toward expeditionary operations. In Afghanistan under Operation Enduring Freedom, small assault teams conducted night raids on Taliban facilitators, coordinated time-sensitive targeting with coalition partners, and executed clandestine reconnaissance to shape larger campaigns. These missions demanded comprehensive skills: close-quarters battle in confined compounds, breach planning for multiple entry points, precision marksmanship in crowded environments, explosive method of entry for hardened doors, and military free-fall parachuting to reach remote staging areas without detection. Selection filtered for physical resilience and psychological steadiness. Candidates endured land navigation events under fatigue, water confidence evolutions, stress shoots, and team problem-solving designed to expose ego or indecision. Graduates of the Special Operations Assaulter course learned to integrate communications, tactical combat casualty care, demolitions, and foreign weapons, so every operator could cover multiple roles when a teammate was injured or separated. Teams rehearsed low-visibility urban movement, vehicle interdictions, aerial insertions by fast rope, and technical surveillance support to collect patterns of life before striking. JTF-2's culture emphasized quiet professionalism. Operations were compartmented, after-action knowledge circulated on a need-to-know basis, sharpening future tactics while protecting sources and methods. In coalition settings, the unit routinely deconflicted air, cyber, and ground effects, aligning Canadian national objectives with partner operations. This combination of discretion and effect led Allied units, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and the SAS to treat JTF-2 as a peer force on the hardest missions. Elite counter-terror forces achieved decisive effects, but Canada also needed a larger, fast-moving regiment to sustain pressure, hold ground briefly, and scale special operations across multiple objectives. That role belonged to the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. Formed in 2006, the Canadian Special Operations Regiment, CSOR, gave the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command a rapid deployment, multi-mission force analogous to the U.S. Army's 75th Ranger Regiment. CSOR's purpose was to bridge the gap between conventional infantry and Tier 1 units, hit hard, move fast, and adapt to shifting tasks without losing tempo. Its core competencies were special warfare, direct action, and special reconnaissance, allowing the regiment to seize key sites, secure high-value individuals, conduct route interdictions, and generate persistent surveillance around targets of interest. Organizationally, the regiment fielded 3 direct action companies, a Special Forces company, and a support company integrating medics, engineers, JTACS, SIGINT specialists, logisticians, and EOD liaisons. This structure allowed commanders to assemble task-organized troops for urban raids, rural pursuit, or border denial, then recombine the same elements for follow-on missions without retraining. CSOR drills emphasized multi-ship helicopter assaults, vehicle assault forces, and foot infiltrations for low-signature approaches in cluttered terrain. Selection drew volunteers from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. A 10-day assessment measured endurance, navigation fidelity, small team leadership, and judgment under sleep deprivation. The subsequent pipeline layered advanced rifle/carbine/pistol packages, explosive breaching, unmanned aerial systems for organic ISR, winter mobility, and small boat handling for riverine or littoral tasks. Earning the Tan Beret signaled readiness to deploy on short notice with minimal external support. In Afghanistan, CSOR troops conducted cordon and search, high-risk detainee transfers, and compound exploitation to harvest media, biometrics, and documents feeding the wider targeting cycle. Beyond combat, the regiment executed foreign internal defense, training partner forces in patrol-based construction, marksmanship, tripwire recognition, and medical drills, expanding local capacity while reducing the footprint of Western troops. CSOR's ability to pivot between kinetic raids and advisory missions made it the expeditionary backbone of the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command, sustaining operational pressure when Tier 1 elements focused on the most time-critical targets. Firefights and raids were only one face of modern conflict. Another threat traveled invisible and odorless: demanding scientists in body armor and soldiers in sealed suits. That mission fell to CJIRU. The Canadian Joint Incident Response Unit, CJIRU, served as the nation's CBRN shield against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear hazards. Unlike conventional units, CJIRU blended forensic science, emergency management, and special operations discipline to control crises that could unfold in minutes and spiral for months. CJIRU organized around 3 complementary troops. The Sampling and Identification Troop applied chain-of-custody procedures to collect air, liquid, solid, and wipe samples, using field-deployable mass spectrometers, immunoassay kits, and radiological dosimetry to classify agents quickly. The Surveillance Troop mapped plumes and hot zones with remote sensors, UAS platforms, and portable spectrometers, establishing safe corridors for responders. The Decontamination Troop executed personnel, equipment, and terrain decon, balancing contact time, concentration, and runoff control to neutralize agents without creating secondary hazards. Training emphasized protective posture management, recognizing when to escalate from respirators to fully encapsulating suits, and working endurance cycles to prevent heat injuries. Operators drilled mass casualty decon lanes, hotline and cold line discipline, and interagency communications with the RCMP and the Public Health Agency of Canada. Because incidents could be accidental or malicious, CJIRU rehearsed evidence preservation, ensuring that technical work supported prosecution or attribution when required. Operationally, CJIRU maintained very high readiness, answering no-notice calls domestically and deploying abroad when embassies, exercises, or coalition forces required specialized CBRN mitigation. Select personnel integrated with JTF-2 to enable assaults in chemically risky environments, advising on overpressure, filtration, and exposure limits so shooters could fight without becoming casualties. This fusion of science and soldiering made CJIRU one of Canada's most technically sophisticated capabilities. Ground units could locate, fix, and finish targets, but without reliable, precise air mobility, opportunity would slip away. The squadron that solved time and terrain for the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command was 427 Special Operations Aviation Squadron. Converted to the Special Operations role in 2006, the 427 Special Operations Aviation Squadron became the air connector for the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command, comparable in mission to the U.S. 160 SOR Night Stalkers. Its centerpiece was the CH-146 Griffin, configured for low-level ingress, NVG-aided night flight, and confined area landings on ridgelines, rooftops, or tight urban lots. Aircraft-mounted doorgun systems for suppressive fire and cruise-integrated aerial precision marksmen to cover ladders, fast ropes, and breach points during insertions. Aircrews trained to a special operations standard, terrain following at treetop height, multi-ship deconfliction, dust landing techniques, and degraded visual environment procedures when brownout or snow reduced reference cues. Mission planning fused weather, illumination windows, threat rings, and contingency LZs, so ground teams received minute-by-minute timing. In high-risk extracts, pilots executed break contact maneuvers, masking the approach behind terrain, popping up only when the assault force reached the pickup point. In Afghanistan, 427 SOs routinely threaded valleys to deliver JTF-2 and CSOR patrols onto time-sensitive targets, then exfiltrated under small arms fire when resistance surged. Outside combat, the squadron supported ISR repositions, medical evacuations, and rapid resupply of specialty items, batteries, breaching charges, blood products, without which missions stalled. The squadron's ethic was simple: be on time, on target, and unseen. While the squadron owned the night skies and the regiments mastered the ground, Canada's maritime flank demanded a force fluent in steel decks, tight ladders, and rolling seas. That niche belonged to the Naval Tactical Operations Group. Established in 2014, the Naval Tactical Operations Group, NTOG, gave the Royal Canadian Navy a persistent maritime interdiction and advanced boarding capability. Though technically outside the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command, NTOG aligned naturally with Special Operations methods, speed, precision, and small team dominance in constrained spaces. The unit's primary function was visit board search and seizure, VBSS. Boarding teams launched from rigid hull inflatable boats or helicopters, matching speed and bearing against non-compliant vessels, then laddered or fast-roped onto deck. Once aboard, they split into engineering, bridge, and cargo hold elements, moving with CQB discipline along narrow passageways and vertical ladders, where muzzle awareness and communications were as critical as marksmanship. Objectives included crew control, bridge seizure, engine isolation, and contraband discovery, all timed to prevent scuttling, data destruction, or radio alerts to accomplices. A secondary mission was force protection, safeguarding Canadian warships and critical infrastructure in ports with elevated threat profiles. NTOG detachments embedded with ships added target development, boarding rehearsals, layered sentry plans, and visit protocols that deterred opportunistic attacks. Training layered precision shooting, hands-on compliance techniques, tactical combat casualty care in tight compartments, IED recognition in cargo spaces, and detainee handling compliant with maritime law. Operationally, NTOG contributed to counter-smuggling patrols, sanctions enforcement, and piracy deterrence alongside NATO partners. Its presence extended Canadian influence along sea lines of communication, where stopping a single ship at the right time could have strategic effects disproportionate to the size of the boarding team.
All these capabilities, raids, reconnaissance, CBRN defense, precision aviation, and maritime boarding, drew strength from a common forge. That forge was the Canadian Special Operations Training Center. The Canadian Special Operations Training Center, CSOTC, functioned as the institutional core of the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command. It selected, educated, validated, and refreshed the people who carried Canada's most sensitive missions. Its mission portfolio spanned selection design, baseline operator courses, mission-specific packages, and recertification to preserve perishable skills. Foundational courses covered marksmanship progression, from mechanical zero to dynamic movement with barricades, small unit tactics, battle drills, urban entries, stairwell problems, communications, secure voice/data, SATCOM, electronic emissions control, combat medical, airway, hemorrhage, control, hypothermia prevention, and mobility, winter skis or snowshoes, rope work, small boat handling. Advanced modules added military freefall, breacher certification, sensitive site exploitation, surreptitious entry tools, ISR integration, and partner force advising with interpreters and cultural frameworks. Facilities included live fire shoot houses, rural demolition lanes, mock urban districts, helicopter landing zones, and CBRN training complexes with decon corridors and contamination simulators. Every scenario injected stressors, time pressure, radio friction, non-combatant presence, to force sound decisions when information was incomplete. Instructors rotated from JTF2, CSOR, CJIRU, and 427 SOAS, bringing fresh lessons from deployments to update tactics, techniques, and procedures. CSOTC also hosted coalition exercises, validating interoperability, from common breaching calls to frequency plans, so Canadian teams could integrate instantly with allies. Beyond skills, the center codified the ethos expected of Canadian special operators: discretion, accountability, lawful conduct, and respect for human rights even under extreme stress. Professional military education blocks addressed rules of engagement, detention standards, information assurance, and operational security, reinforcing that strategic effects often hinged on tactical behavior at the smallest team level. Through continuous learning, rigorous validation, and disciplined doctrine management, CSOTC ensured that every operator, from Tier 1 assaulters to CBRN specialists and Special Operations aircrew, remained mission-ready, interoperable, and adaptive across the full spectrum of tasks Canada demanded. Canada's Special Operations Forces had shown precision, discipline, and reach across every domain. But across the Atlantic, Britain's elite were rewriting the very rules of modern warfare. Watch every British Special Forces explained in detail to see how their story unfolded.